Okay, we're doing it. After I let fill in. So after a bunch of clay BJD videos, I think it's time to finally get around to sculpting digitally for once. I mean, with you guys. What I can reasonably fit into a YouTube video anyways. Sculpting dolls takes literal hours, like hundreds of hours, sometimes so many hours. And like clay sculpting, there are so many steps on the path to get your doll done. I'm going to aim to make this a series as long as there's interest in people like this kind of video. But to get this party started, this video is going to be doing the blueprint and the blockout for your digitally sculpted doll. So let's get started. The blueprint is the design of your doll. It's the general idea for the shape, features, and jointing that you want your doll to have. It is super helpful in keeping your doll in scale. So this doll is going to be a bit more custom than a lot of my other dolls, and I'm basically sculpting this one as a sort of series. It's going to be single jointed at the shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, ankles, all of those. And it's going to be built more on the chunky side. I'm going for this like neutral type base body, kind of chubby, maybe a little like youthful. And I want there to be different parts that we can interchange here. So I'm thinking a few different heads, so like 4 different heads. And these are just going to be like the face structures. So maybe like kind of a surprised one, kind of a sad one, maybe one that looks a bit more like an animal, a bunny, maybe a kitty cat type thing. And then one that has like kind of smaller wide set eyes. I really like the idea of having a doll that doesn't have like nose and mouth to worry about. I think the expression is going to come really come from the eyes on these ones. And besides these 4 face types, I also want to do at least 4 ear types. So to go with those, my base ones I definitely want are like an aquatic type, some kind of like pointy ear with an antenna, some kind of maybe like short, low elf ear, maybe like cat-like, and then one that's a little bit more bunny-like. My idea of fairies definitely is inspired by this book that I read when I was so little, and my mom had this book called An Anthology of Fairies. I think that's what it was called. And it was just like a collection of beautiful artworks of fairies and describing the types of fairies. I wish I still had that book, or she still had that book. I don't think she does. I might go hunting for it one day, but it was gorgeous. But that's kind of the type of fairies I've always envisioned in my head, like very like flora and fauna mashed together rather than like Tinkerbell type fairies. Like that has never been a fairy in my head. That is like classic fairy, but anyways. Not to say that they don't have wings, because I definitely am going to have some wing options. I'm completely undecided on exactly how I'm going to do these wings, but I'm thinking something moth-like, maybe something like that's leaves, maybe something that's like a little bitty type butterfly wing, maybe like a long butterfly wing. I'm not fully sure. I kind of just like to see what happens when I start sculpting. And besides the ears, faces, and the wings, I'm also going to have hand and feet options. I definitely want like almost paw-like. I want some like chubby human-ish hands and maybe some like weird super long fingers. And then I want to have a couple different tail options as well. But again, maybe something a bit more like paintbrushy, like a lion tail, and then maybe something more like just a cat tail. But again, I just like to kind of come up with those as I go. So that said, we have our blueprint and it is time to get into sculpting the doll. So let's go. Okay, so with our blueprint done, it's time to get into the blocking. Blocking is just the creation of basic shapes to kind of roughly shape out your doll. I like to pull out basically all of the base meshes to the side and just have like my square cube thing, my sphere thing, my cylinder, and everything all to the side. That way I can just kind of clone the pieces as I need them instead of having to go and add a new mesh every single time. I feel like it saves me time. I could be wrong, but it works for me, okay. So yeah, like I said, a sphere, a cylinder, and a box are basically the meshes I'm going to need to make a full doll. Sometimes I get fancy and I use other shapes, but this is really what I'm going to be using for the blockout. But before I get into the body, I'm going to start with the head shape. Basically, I'm going to take a sphere and I'm just going to flatten the sides of it. Typically, the base head shape I aim for would be pretty different because typically I'm sculpting something a little more humanoid. So instead of that classic skull shape, I'm kind of just flattening the sides of the sphere. Then I just use the drag tool to kind of pull the pieces into the positions I want them to be in. So regardless of the doll I'm making, my next step is usually to block in the eyes. So to do this, I clone a sphere and then I just pull it over into the position I want it to, fiddle with the sizing or whatever for a little bit until I'm happy with it. And in the case of this doll, I can see right away that I'm gonna have to adjust the skull shape or like the base head shape to fit around the eyes if I want them to sit the way I plan them to sit in this doll. So let's go ahead and do that. So once I'm happy with the eye setting and the placement, I'm gonna go ahead and clone the eye sphere I've been using, and I'm gonna just enlarge it just a little bit. And the purpose of this is to make the eyelids. Also, I'm gonna mention, I'm gonna try to keep the color of meshes different wherever possible so that you can see where the different parts are. This also helps me while I'm sculpting, but I'm doing this mostly for you guys at this point. In this case, the eyelid's white and the eyeball is black. So I'm gonna use the split tool to cut the eyelid in 3 parts basically. So I like to use the straight line split tool for this. I just find it works best. And I'm basically going to split it here and here. And once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and just delete that middle cake slice piece because we don't need that. Then I'm going to switch and use the gizmo tool, which has like all of the little lines and stuff on it. So I can just pull up and then shift the eyelid into the position that I want it to be in. Make sure you're checking the position from all sides, not just from the front, because you want to make sure that the eyes aren't sitting too far back in the head or too far forward where they're bulging out too much. Once I've used the gizmo tool to kind of position the eyelid the way I want, I can go ahead and use the drag tool to kind of grab edges of the eye, like the eyelid, and pull them into the desired shape. Basically, this is where you get like the eye shape. And you typically would pull the corners down to meet each other. You don't want to have like a flat gap here. One tip I'm going to say is make sure that you're keeping your eyelid thick enough. So you want to make sure you have a nice clear ridge of eyelid all the way around your eye shape. Otherwise your eyelids and your wells are going to be really thin and really prone to cracking. So just a tip there, I guess. Okay, so I'm happy with how everything's looking, so I'm gonna go ahead and attach those to the head base. The eyelids, not the eyeball. And I just do that using like the Boolean merge type tool. We're gonna be using that a lot sculpting the doll. The one thing about connecting the pieces is once you've connected these spheres that you've basically twisted around, your head is no longer going to be sculpting symmetrically unless you reset it. So I just go over to the gizmo tool and select it, like from the toolbar on the side. And then I'm gonna go up to the symmetry tool and I'm gonna click to like reorient here. Then I just use the gizmo tool to recenter down the middle line and set it. And at that point, we're sculpting symmetrically again. Woo! If you really want to be sure you're sculpting symmetrically at this point, you can go ahead and make sure you're mirroring locally and not world view. But yeah, you just mirror locally and make sure your piece is 100% symmetrical before going forward if you're concerned at all. And the last thing we're going to do on the head right now is I'm going to go ahead and clone the eyes, like the eyeballs themselves. And I'm going to set one to hidden and keep one. Hi, Phil. Phil break. Hi, baby. Hi, baby. I have a coffee sip, too. He's such a sweetie. You know I'm working. You know I'm working. You do. You know. Okay. Okay, yeah, I'm going to clone the eyes so that I can use one to cut the eye holes. So I clone them and I merge 2 of them together, like one left, one right. And then I'm going to set them to hidden. We're going to merge the eyes that I've hidden with the head that we've been sculpting. And doing that will cut the eyeball shape out of the head. Could you not? Could you not? This is not the time for you. It's not. It's not the time for you. I'm going to keep a set of eyes visible the whole time I'm sculpting the head though. I think it just keeps it cuter and it helps me like envision the features better. I just like it better than having like the hollow eye holes like staring into my soul. I'm just taking a half a second and I'm just dropping some extra spheres and cylinders that we're going to use later on. Just dropping them into the head to kind of block out that shape roughly. We're not cutting the head apart yet, but we're gonna go on to blocking the body. We're not cutting out the head yet, but we're gonna move ahead to blocking the body. So that's where we're going to leave the head for this video. So let's get started on this body now. When I block out bodies, I tend to block everything out in spheres to start with. And I tend to kind of block in the joints or like first thing. And this is actually the exact same way I draw. I tend to block out the spheres for like shoulders, hips, knees, ankles, elbows, wrists, and then kind of shape everything else around that. This is sort of a short, chibi type body I'm going for. So my knees and everything are a lot closer together than they would be if I were sculpting like a more human shape. So just bear that in mind when you're looking at my proportions. That is what's going on there. Oh, and yeah, I know that at this point, all of these balls are way too small compared to this head. That's going to be fixed later. Don't worry about that. It's fine. It will be fine, okay. So yeah, shoulders, butt, knees, and ankles. It's like kind of a warped version of heads and shoulders, knees, and toes, but that's the game we're playing today. Once I've got all of my joints kind of put in there, I'm going to add extra spheres. One for the chest, one for the belly, and then I'm going to add some more for like the thighs and the calves. So when I do the ones for the thighs and the calves and the arms and stuff, I mirror the pieces as I'm going. So I end up with like both arms showing at the same time, both thighs showing at the same time. And this really helps me get a feel for how close the thighs are going to be. It helps me make sure they don't touch. As much as I would love for my chubby doll body's thighs to really hit together, and like if you've been around, you know, I've said this many times, body squish, resin doesn't. And if you want your doll to be able to move properly or sit properly, unfortunately their thighs aren't going to be able to touch. Maybe one day I'll figure it out, but that day is not today. So we're just gonna keep trucking forward with the way I've been doing this. At this point, this body is definitely giving Michelin Man. Give it some actual shape, and I'm going to go back to the drag tool, which is like, drag tool at this point is like majority of what's happening. And I'm just going to pull the pieces so that they sit around the joints better and kind of like have a more body type shape. That looks pretty good for now. As I mentioned, this body is going to be single jointed. So that means at this point, I can connect some of these spheres together. For example, the shoulders can connect onto the bicep pieces. The knees can connect onto my thigh pieces. And my elbows can connect onto my forearm pieces. If you're double jointing your doll, don't do this. Maybe eventually I can do a tutorial or like a walkthrough on how I do double joints, because it gets infinitely more complicated. I don't know. I just want these guys to be extra sturdy and just like cute, simple, kind of simple. There's like 3,000 option parts, but little friends that I can like keep around on my desk or like whatever. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I'm also going to take this, this booty down a notch because it's giving a little too much. Typically, if I was doing single joints, I would also have connected the hip joints to the thighs, but I'm not doing that this time. I want to do a more like a la Leaky World art body where the hip joints are connected onto the torso. This isn't a body type I've like done and released before. I don't think. Maybe Saturn's run. I think Saturn's original doll actually had like the teeny tiny had hip joints like that, but that's what we're doing because I think it's cute. I think it adds to like the rotund type look. So to do that, I have to cut down the thighs a little bit using the split tool, but I'm going to go ahead and just use like the freehand version and then round it out. And I'm also going to go ahead and add those spheres for the hips. where they need to go. This is where being able to position things and using spheres really helps, because this can be quite complicated to place a joint, especially if it's like one of your first times doing it. As I go, and if you're following along, I recommend as you go to just kind of shape things and pull things into their correct places. If you kind of do too much without checking how everything's fitting together, you can end up at the end, like when you go to cut your pieces, with just a mess that is not going to work together. Shape the entirety of the body and then try to work the joints into that shape. I completely understand doing that, because like you want the aesthetic to look a certain way, etc., etc. However, this can mean it can be really difficult. Like maybe you made your knees too narrow, and now your knee joint is going to be so tiny that it's not actually going to support the weight of your doll. Like there's a whole lot that goes into this, and I just really think it's a good idea to balance things out as you go and work around the joints. I just think it's a good idea. And this is where the blueprint comes in handy, is you can kind of draw out the aesthetic of the body you want and then figure out how spheres would fit in there and how you can like adjust the body shape in your blueprint before you even get into blocking, to kind of like smooth out any of these problems. Also, I forgot to mention, if you want, I tend to keep my blueprint pulled up next to, like on a screen next to where I'm sculpting, because I get distracted by having it in the background too much. But you can add it as a reference image in Nomad Sculpt, so it will be behind and you can kind of place your spheres like over your drawing, and that would probably help you out a lot. That's not how I do things. I find it very distracting when I do that, so just probably should let you know that we are using the blueprint. Anyways, this body doesn't have a neck, so we need to go ahead and add one on because it needs a neck. I feel, I don't know, I'm feeling like a bit goofy right now. I don't know, maybe this is not the moment to film, but we're here, we're being goofy. We're getting this doll kind of put together. I'm just adding it via a sphere, and once I've got it on there, kind of roughly shaped out, I'm just gonna go ahead and connect it onto the chest sphere piece thing. Oh, let's go ahead and actually connect those hip balls onto the torso. I just realized I had not done that yet. I placed them, but they're not actually connected on, so it's time to do that. So just quickly. Okay, I think that looks pretty good as a base body. But like, I think we can both agree that the head looks ridiculously proportioned, so let's just go ahead and kind of size things a little closer together, just super quickly. So I'm gonna go ahead and select everything that isn't part of the head meshes and sculpt, and using the gizmo tool, just enlarge them until I think it looks about right. You can pull all your head meshes over and line things up, so you can really get a feel for the proportions of your doll. But yeah, I think after some super quick adjustments, that's basically where we're ending off for this one. So yeah, that was part one, the blueprint and the blockout. I'm gonna try and post these one a month maybe. I don't want it to be too many. I don't know, maybe, I don't want to release them all at once. I don't know how to release these, but I think I'm just gonna go one a month. And next time we're going to work on joints and channels. If you're looking for other videos for digital sculpting in the meantime, I do have a few others. I have a series on sculpting a head. We are going to sculpt a head in this one as well. However, there aren't as many features, like there's not like a nose and a mouth in this one. So if you're looking for how to sculpt a face with like a nose and a mouth, I do have a video that shows how to do that and gives tips and stuff. So be sure to check that out. But otherwise, thanks for watching this video. Let me know what you thought, if this tutorial was at least a little helpful. I don't even know if I can call it a tutorial. It's more so just my process. But anyways, for now, if you're already subscribed, thanks so much for subscribing. If you're new here, I hope you like the content and will consider subscribing. As always, I hope you have a fantastic day.